All right. Before we start, just want to check I think Shane recording, right?
Yeah, we're good.
We're good? All right, let's get started. So, the Eye of a Dream team analyzed the first 5 minutes of episode 98 of the podcast Philosophize This by Stephen West. This was a new podcast that I had never seen before, but it looked interesting and it fit all the requirements for an audio analysis, so I thought we'd check it out. Episode 98 was on the theories of Arthur Schopenhauer, which admittedly isn't a topic I know much about. I don't know if that's a topic a lot of people know much about. It's kind of a foreign thing for a lot of people, I think, which means that Stephen West was, he had a bit of a challenge ahead of him, as his audience was likely not too familiar with the things he was speaking about. This challenge isn't made any easier by the intrinsic limitations of a podcast, obviously. Stephen couldn't use any visual aids or body language to convey his message like another speaker might be able to. Despite all of this, he still did a pretty good job at conveying his info to his audience, thanks most to his clear diction, conversational tone, which made it much easier to understand, I think. He slipped up a few times in his speech, probably due to how quickly he was speaking. He spoke very fast. I don't know if any of you listened to it, but he really did speak he spoke a lot at speed. But he seemed very passionate about what he was talking about, which I think went a long way. To get into more detail about what made Stephen's podcast so good, we're going to shift the focus over to Shane to talk a little bit about his conversational tone and how easy he was to understand.
Yep. Thank you, Samuel. Yeah, for a topic that I feel that none of us had any idea about, and being so deep into the series, episode 98, it really felt like I was just, listening to a friend talk about something they were passionate about. The words he used, the tone, it was very friendly and somewhat comical in a way. It was very, very easy to understand and follow along. There were a couple slip-ups, and that's what Dylan's going to focus on. Pass that over to him.
Yeah, so throughout his speech, he spoke extremely fast at points. So fast that it made it hard for the audience to understand, especially if you didn't have a background on the topic. Maybe it would have been a little easier to understand if you had the background. But speaking that fast without a visual aid made it very difficult for us to understand what he was talking about. And I actually had to go back and rewatch it a couple times just to understand what he was talking about. And due to him speaking so fast, he actually had to use a couple of filler words because he lost track of where he was throughout his speech. And we feel if he slowed down, he would have gotten rid of those filler words because he would have been able to keep track of where he was. And then we also would have had a better understanding throughout the whole entire speech because it would have been much slower and much easier for us to understand. So now I'm going to throw it over to Amanda to talk about his passion.
Thank you, Dylan. I'm going to talk about the passion about the topic. Well, overall, it was very obvious in the tone of his voice and the way that he extended some of his words to make a sentence more dramatic or make it sound like he was more passionate about this sentence than a specific sentence in the past. It was different than a typical speech because you can usually see hand movements and facial expressions, but you had to solely focus on the sound of his voice. And the sound of his voice would vary from different sections. And it was very obvious at times when he was talking about something that he didn't really know or was educated on, but when he was educated about a specific part of the speech, it was very known. But overall, the passion in his voice was very catching, so it kept you wanting to listen more. So I'll throw it to Megan now for the conclusion.
Thank you, Amanda. So to sum up everything that my group has just said, podcasts in general are a more informal style of public speaking, and that's a clear indicator of the conversational tone, the speaking quickly, the slip-ups, and the filler words. However, the best part about podcasts is that these people aren't speaking because they have to necessarily, but because they want to. And it really shows in the passion that is found, just by listening to him speak. Overall, there are definitely mixed opinions on podcasts and audio presentations in general. But for the platform that this man had created for himself, I feel as though, and I feel like my group can also attest, that he did a very good job speaking upon his points and talking about something that we weren't familiar with, but still making it easy to sit through the 5 minutes that we listened to. So overall, we felt that he did a pretty good job, especially with just podcasts being very informal and conversational in its character. And thank you for listening.
Good job. Okay. So my question for you guys will be the same